So this is my reading wrap up for July, September, and August. July, August, September. I was going through my videos and realized that I basically fell off the wagon and have not filmed a reading wrap up basically since June, and that's too long. That's too long. It's been 3 months. I have my books written down here. Ignore my scribbles. So this is my reading wrap up for the months of July, August, and September. Starting off for July, I read the book Bull Moon Rising by Ruby Dixon, and I have, just going off my notes here, I gave that book a 3.75. I just felt like the plot was good, but I was a little grossed out by some aspects, and you'll have to read it to know what I'm talking about. So if you've read it and you like, let me know your opinion in the comments down below. Next up, I read this one right here on my shelf, Talking as Fast as I Can by Lauren Graham. I actually really enjoyed this book. However, I loved the third Gilmore Girl more. I just loved how she went over her life. Yeah, so I gave Talking as Fast as I Can a 3.75 as well. And if you want to keep up to date with like the books I'm currently reading, my ratings, and like my reviews, I do have a Fable account. I'll put a little screenshot here. Let's be Fable friends. The third book for the month of July I read was The Serpent and the Wings of Night. I gave this a 4.5. I absolutely loved it. I think it's such a good book. You'll hear my review later on the next two books in the Crowns of Nyaxia series. But let's move on to the fourth book I read for the month of July, which was Soul of Shadow. Soul of Shadow was an arc for me for the month of July. I gave it a 5 stars, and I believe the second book comes out in March. I'm hoping I can get my hands on an arc for the second book. I'm also hoping there's an audiobook format, and I'm just keeping my eyes and ears open for that. I'm so excited for the second book because the first book left me on such a cliffhanger, and I was not ready for that cliffhanger. Okay, moving on. So the last two books I read for the month of July are the next two books in the Crowns of Nyaxia series. I read The Ashes and The Star-Cursed King, which I gave a 3.5, and then The Songbird and The Heart of Stone I gave a 3. Both of these I gave such a low rating because I just feel like the first one was so good, and then the next two fell off for me. Like the plot wasn't as good, I feel like, and were just not my favorite. They fell off for me. I didn't enjoy them as much as I enjoyed the first one, but that's okay because the first one was just so good, and that's all that matters to me. Moving on to August, I have a copy here somewhere. Oh, it's up there. I'm not getting that. I read Anatomy, a Love Story, and Immortality, a Love Story by Dana Schwartz. I actually picked up the second book at a Philibag bookstore sale, and I didn't know it was the second book at first, and so I waited and requested the first one on Libby and read the first one, then read the second one. Anatomy, a Love Story is the first book. I gave that a 4.5. I actually really enjoyed it. I gave Immortality, the second book in that series, a 3.5 just because it fell off for me. It was still good. I still enjoyed the plot. However, it just wasn't as good as Anatomy. Highly suggest reading both still. I still think they're such great books to read. I love the overall storyline and how the FMC, she wants to become a female surgeon, but like it's impossible because women aren't allowed to be surgeon in that time, and she hires what are they called? She hires a, I think is what it's called. I can't remember the correct terminology from the book, but basically they're like grave robbers, and he has to exhume dead bodies to practice her surgical skills on. And I think the whole plot is just amazing, and I love how it delves into some other subplots, and I highly suggest reading it. The third book I read for the month of August was Slewfoot, and I gave Slewfoot a 4.5. I think this book was amazing. I love the feminine rage aspect. As someone who struggles with feminine rage, I want to say it reminds me a lot of Green Teeth, but in a more adult version, because Green Teeth is very YA. To like describe Green Teeth, I would say that Green Teeth is a more docile YA version of feminine rage, where Slewfoot comes in and is like the more adult, more mature version of feminine rage portrayed in a novel. And I think it's such a good book. Highly suggest both. Green Teeth and Slewfoot are both really good books. The last book I read for the month of August was a Quicksilver bonus scene, which is the Kingfisher POV. I gave this a 1.5. Overall, I think the bonus scene was amazing. However, it was edited so poorly and it just should not have been released yet. Like there were some scenes you couldn't even hear them talking because they had like not modulated the background noises because it was a graphic audio. So like all the audios weren't lined up correctly, I guess you could say. It's been a month since I've listened to this, but I just remember there being so many issues, like technical issues with the audio, and that's why I gave it such a low POV because I purchased this off of Audible, and I think if someone's gonna go out of their way to purchase something, especially on Audible where books are quite expensive, then it should be really top quality, especially a graphic novel. That's my little rant. Let's move on to the month of September. So for the first book, and oh my god, you don't know how excited and happy and ecstatic I am to be done with the series and to like move on and just put like close that chapter on that series because it's such a good series. But I literally have had a year from the start of the series until like pausing it to now. So I started Throne of Glass by Sarah J. Maas in the middle to end of my pregnancy. The middle to end of my pregnancy was early to mid 2023, so January to June of 2023. I want to say, so I started Tower of Dawn towards the end of my pregnancy, kept restarting it after I gave birth and just didn't have time, put it aside and said, you know what, I'll read it when I can get to it. And then I discovered audiobooks, got really into audiobooks, and was like, okay, I have time for books. For the month of September, my first book was starting and finishing Tower of Dawn, and I finished it, gave it a 5 stars. Such a good series. I think that, I don't know, there's just something to the world building in Throne of Glass. After that, I read Kingdom of Ash, and I of course, gave Kingdom of Ash a 5 stars. I am a romantasy girly. Romantasy will always be my ride or die, and I love reading a multitude of genres, but romantasy will just always be my tried and true. The third book for the month of September that I read is Shield of Sparrows. I gave Shield of Sparrows a 5 stars. Again, romantasy. I absolutely loved it. I think it's such a beautiful portrayal of romantasy along the lines of like if you loved ACOTAR or Throne of Glass. I do believe it's being made into a Netflix original, but I have seen some news that Shield of Sparrows is being made into a live action. The fourth book I read for the month of September was Sense and Suitability by Pepper Basham. This is actually my arc this month. I gave Sense and Suitability a 4 stars. It is such a beautiful portrayal of clean Regency romance. I love it. If you're a fan of Bridgerton or Jane Austen, it is a very clean, closed door, no spice whatsoever Regency romance, and if you need a little break from the spice, highly suggest it. It's such a beautiful book. My last book for the month of September is another arc, but my review will be up here soon, but it is Brigands and Bread Knives by Travis Baldree. It is a continuation of his series. Bookshops and Bone Dust, as well as Legends and Lattes. I am so excited for it to be released and for other people to get to enjoy it because it is from Fern's point of view, and I'm so glad she finally got her own spotlight, and I really enjoyed it. I think it's a 5 stars. That's all the books I read from July to September.
Why the fuck you lying? I am currently editing my reading wrap up, but there are a couple books I want to mention that I didn't add into the reading wrap up. So the first one that I missed is Deep End by Ali Hazelwood. I read that in September. I gave it a 3.75, not because I thought it was like bad writing or anything. It was just there were some subplots that like weren't my fave, but overall I think it was such a good like pull me out of a slump read. I think that like novellas are like the perfect books to pull you out of a slump because you don't have to worry about getting really pulled into like a world with like tons of world building and falling in love with like a new book layout. It's just like one book, one and done, and it's just no thoughts, all vibes style writing, and I think that Deep End was perfect in pulling me out of my slump. The next one that I read was The Wiener Across the Way by Amy Ward. I gave this one a 4 stars. Honestly, it's been a little while. I read this one back in September as well. Loved the narration. I loved the storyline. I thought it was really cute. Again, it's another great book. It's just like one novella. I do think it's in like a longer group of books, but they can be read as standalone. However, it's a really good book. It also pulled me out of a slump. The Wiener Across the Way is like the perfect little anti slump read. So that's 17 books for the last 3 months, which is still quite a bit of books. Whether you've read like one book a month or 5 or 10, however many you can read in a month, I still think that's amazing. I think everyone should be reading more, even if it's just one book a month.
I'm so excited to finally be caught up on my reading wrap up. I'm hoping starting at the end of October that I can stick to my month to month because I keep falling off that wagon and not staying on it. That is my reading wrap up. If there's any types of videos you want to see from me, let me know in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.